If you're a fan of gooey, creamy cheese sauces, this is the one secret you need. I've made a ton of cheese sauces, just like a cheese dip, like a queso, or even mac and cheese. And I usually do the roux combination, but this is the chemistry that'll give you super gooey cheese sauce. It's sodium citrate, which is a type of salt that helps cheeses combine and emulsify better with liquid. It's one of the contributing ingredients to our favorite processed cheeses like these singles or Velveeta. Those creamy gooey cheeses use a sodium citrate to help achieve that through chemistry. This is something you can do right at home. I have my favorite ingredient, super ingredient baking soda. I'm just gonna do 5 teaspoons of this. I think that was 4. This should be number 5. And then you need a citric acid powder. So I'm gonna do 4 of these in with the baking soda. But these are super common ingredients you can find in most grocery stores. Baking soda, of course, so universal, so common. I bet you have an expired one in your cabinet and a brand new one you haven't opened yet. That's at least me. That's at least me. But citric acid is something you may not notice or may not have, but you can easily find it in grocery stores. If you go to a larger grocery store, Walmart carries it in the canning food supplies. So citric acid, even at the regular grocery store, easy to find. You can find sodium citrate online, but it's really easy to just pick up these 2 ingredients because they have versatile uses. Citric acid you can use in both culinary applications and cleaning around the house. Same goes for baking soda. So having these 2 ingredients ensures you have multiple uses for them and making this creamy, gooey cheese sauce. So I don't want this milk to scald on the bottom, so I'm just gonna move it around a little bit. But this is essentially what you're looking for, is your own sodium citrate powder. It's not quite sodium citrate yet because there needs to be a chemical reaction from the 2 that happens in liquid that then turns it into sodium citrate. And citric acid is very sour, very tangy. The baking soda neutralizes that, so you're just left with the sodium citrate. I'm gonna do 2 teaspoons of this in this liquid, and we should see the chemical reaction happening, all that foaming and bubbling we're used to when it comes to baking soda. Look at that. Just be careful, make sure you have a large enough pot because this is foaming up. But just give that a stir. As the bubbles subside, all that you're gonna be left with in your liquid is sodium citrate. Exactly what you're looking for to make this creamy sauce. So another alternative, if you can't find citric acid, you can use a lime. Just juice up a lime, add some baking soda to it. Once the baking soda reacts with the lime, you'll be left with the sodium citrate as a residual compound, and then you can just go ahead and make your recipe as follows. So just getting this mixed up. Still a few more bubbles left. That milk is still heating through, but this will help those proteins be very stretchy and elastic, help everything melt up nice and gooey. Now we don't want this liquid to really bubble or boil. Just looking for a light simmer, just enough to melt the cheese. Now I'm doing a white cheese sauce. I just have a Mexican melting cheese like a queso blanco and some white cheddar. But any creamy cheese, any gooey cheese works. You use cheddar, mozzarella, can really mix up the cheeses. It does work better with, more traditional melty cheeses than maybe your hard cheeses. So those bubbles are going down. So in this pan, we put in baking soda and the citric acid. What we're left with is just the sodium citrate. I was a big science kid growing up. I loved all things science. And I think I have an affinity for cooking because it really is so based in science and chemistry. I'm just gonna taste this liquid, not necessarily for the flavor, but just to experience if it is citrusy at all. It has a salty savoriness to it. It's very milky, but you cannot taste the citric acid because that acid has been completely neutralized by the baking soda. So now I just have to get my cheese in there. And I usually like to do a little at a time. Whenever I'm making a cheese sauce, just slow, gentle melting will give you the best results. I might need more cheese. I got a lot of liquid. So this is gonna melt up a little bit. And I think I was so skimpy with my cheese, but I can already tell that cheese is just melting so smoothly. If you've ever tried to melt cheese before just in a little bit of liquid, it may get a little clumpy and you'll notice, it's a little granular. It's not just smooth, creamy consistency. That's because the liquid is not emulsifying with the fats in the cheese. So once again, a lot of science when it comes to cooking, but it doesn't have to be too overwhelming. It can be super simple as mixing 2 common ingredients and then putting it in your cheese sauce. Everybody's watching me so closely grade this cheese so I don't lose a knuckle, lose a fingertip in the process. One thing that's common with cheese sauces too is they seize up, so they're really thick and firm, and it's really hard to get that melty cheese to incorporate into the liquid. The sodium citrate really helps that process. Makes things a lot smoother, both the process and the consistency. This is a go-to for any creamy cheese recipe, any creamy sauce recipe that you're combining cheese into. I've seen crock pot quesos, so put your green chilies in there, put some chorizo in there, but put a little bit of that sodium citrate in there too, and it'll be really creamy. Never be conservative when it comes to cheese, just go wild. The more cheese, the better. That's what I'm talking about. But I mean, you can't get much creamier and smooth and gooey than that. So in this batch, I used a little bit too much milk. It is kind of thin. Most cheese sauces, you only need a little bit of that liquid just to help everything melt and combine. You can see that the consistency is very creamy, gooey, and everything's combined. We don't have clumps of cheese not combining with the liquid. It's not oily. So I have to taste it. Dipping a chip in. Melty, creamy, tasty cheese. Now, of course, you can season this up however you want. If you're going more queso route, maybe some chili powder, some green chili, some cumin, go wild. Or you can add in any flavors depending on what you're creating. Now that is a gooey, creamy cheese sauce.